rather. The transfer deadline day 2 years ago, which to anyone that doesn't know, there's one day at the end of August where all of the transfers of players have to be made by midnight if they're going to be playing for that club for the rest of the season. And Sky has made quite a big kind of brand out of this day. People are fascinated by transfers and who's going to sign for their club, and we send reporters out all over the country to all the different training grounds and stadiums, and players will arrive last minute, they get a medical, they sign the contract, and they've done it in time for the deadline, and it can be quite exciting. But about 2 years ago, it kind of descended a little bit into kind of anarchy, really. There were 3 or 4 different events around the country, and I think one of the worst was one of our reporters outside Goodison Park in Liverpool actually had a purple dildo kind of waved in his face by some of the crowd that were gathering behind the camera, and it became a little. There's instances of this in America as well, where you've got people that want to interrupt live kind of news reports and swear or kind of declare some kind of message that they want to get across, and you had quite a few of those people engaging with our reporters and causing. And I think there were a few Ofcom complaints. There was a lot of media interest, and we had to kind of quite quickly form, a response. It was, the presenter apologised. We didn't show a replay of it. All of those kind of key things that you have to do as a broadcaster. But from a PR point of view, we need to get that message across to the media quite quickly, because with social media, 24-hour rolling news, it can quickly become a bigger story.
You mentioned earlier about the viewing figures going down. Do you think if that trend does continue, then Sky could shift to a more league pass oriented thing with BT maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I think all kind of options from that perspective are open. I think it would depend really on just the kind of the factors at play. I mean, the price of subscription has gone up quite steadily over the last few years, and I think that does cause an issue on affordability, particularly the economic climate and how it fluctuates, and those kind of things will have an impact on people and whether they want to subscribe and keep that product. But I think Sky would just have to react to what the audience kind of is saying, and if people were unsubscribing in huge numbers, then they probably have to look at a number of different options as to how they would attract them back. Because there's quite a complex model, a bit like newspapers, where they've got the cover price where you pay for, but you've also got advertising inside it, and advertisers pay a lot of money to be kind of in between a big Man United Liverpool game. There's what's called a turbo break right before kickoff. That's usually Ray Winston telling you about the latest odds and betting. But they will have paid a huge amount of money, like the Super Bowl advert at half time. They pay a huge premium to get that advertising slot, and that's kind of another way that Sky can generate money. But if there's 3 million people watching, there'll be a certain amount of money you can make. If there's 300,000 people watching, then you're obviously going to make a lot less from that ad revenue.
Is there a fear at Sky that come the next bid for the Premier League rights, you might get outbid by BT? Because obviously if that goes, that's quite a big part of Sky's identity. Without the Premier League, you've lots of other stuff like the Ashes, Champions League. Like, how do you ensure that you're going to get that? Because isn't it like a blind bid as well?
Yeah, I think so. BT won the rights to the Champions League in 2013, and I think like anything, it's part sort of science and part kind of working out where the value is, and then there's also a bit of risk and a bit of a gamble. I think it's a bit like buying a house. You're never going to know if you're bidding against someone else. You're never going to know how far they will go, and if they're going to go up here, and that's way more than you can afford and would be able to return the investment, then you just simply don't go there. And I think the Champions League was an example where we knew the price that we could pay at the top level to make it profitable to us, and it went beyond that, so we stepped away and BT won the rights. And I think they paid about £900 million for 3 years for the 3 years of the Champions League, and compared to Premier League in terms of the interest that you get from viewers, it was a lot smaller because there's a lot fewer games that involve English clubs, and there's also no guarantee on which clubs they would be. So, like for example, this season, Manchester United and Liverpool, who have the biggest, historically the biggest TV audiences, neither of those teams are in the Champions League this season. So there's never a guarantee with that investment that you'll be able to get, kind of the viewing and the return that you would see. I think in the Premier League it's probably a lot higher, as proved by the amount that we've paid for the current 3-year deal. But I think stretching as a business and being able to use it to make it still profitable for us means that we've probably still got room to grow, and I'm not sure whether that's the same case for BT. Now they're going to a pay model. It used to be a free channel, now it's pay. I don't know whether they'll be able to stretch even further than they have done already. But again, there'll be a line at which it's not going to be profitable for Sky, and they won't go beyond that. If BT can pay above that, then they'll win the rights.
Thanks, that's a really interesting. I like the picture of Matt and Tucker at the beginning. And it kind of made me think: do you ever get any guidance, either at the FA or Sky, about when you, the person managing the story, may actually become the story? And I'm thinking about Andy Walker on the front of the Sun after the Euros. Do they ever give you any kind of pre-training, anything along those lines?
Not specific to those kind of examples, because I think they can come up quite out of nowhere. So he actually was my replacement at the FA, Andy, and I think, just talking through that scenario, I think the Sun as a newspaper clearly wanted to further that story of England, and I think they'd done a story of Raheem Sterling and the house that actually turned out to be a house he bought for his mum, but it was this lavish big house, and they wanted to show the the kind of the fans' revolt against these players with all their money. So they were looking for something to follow that up on that following Monday, and I think unfortunately for Andy, he probably presented them with an open kind of the door was slightly ajar, and they were then able to kind of smash it down and create a story. But I think I was certainly always aware and made aware by kind of my bosses at the FA that the profile that you have in public, you can become the story, whether it's through social media, through the things that you say to journalists, the actions that you make. I think you always have to be careful working in that role, because ultimately as he was dubbed an FA big wig or fat cat or whatever the name is, if you work for that organisation, you can be kind of put up as someone that has done wrong in the eyes of that newspaper.
Sure. I just wanted to bring you on to sort of Sam Allardyce situation, mainly because I included it in the email saying you were going to talk about it, so I don't want to be accused of lying. Obviously, a lot of questions, I think, to the FA, particularly around whether or not they should have appointed him in the first place because of his rather dubious track record. I don't think the sting really came as much surprise to many people.
No.
In that kind of situation, how would the FA go about trying to manage that kind of, what it's gone through with Sam Allardyce? Can you just give us some kind of insight into what would be going on in terms of the PR department of the FA around the Allardyce story?
So the story came out on a Monday, and I think the immediate reaction from Greg Demetriou, who actually worked with Sam at West Ham, who's now the head of communications at the FA, who I worked with for a few years, his immediate call would be both to the people that are involved, so his boss Martin Glenn, new chairman Greg Clark, and also to Sam himself, to just inform him of what he knows. And I think then the next step is to get as much information from the Telegraph as possible. I think the slight issue within that situation was that the Telegraph obviously had quite a few stories that they'd planned for 7 or 8 months, and they wanted to land them across 4 or 5 days. They wanted to make as big an impact as a newspaper, similar to, you could say, the expenses scandal, the way they handled that and measured it across a number of days. Because I think when people are, particularly an organisation like the FA or the government or the cabinet or the kind of the members of parliament, when they're unsure of what is to come, it can sometimes make the actions even greater, of greater importance, because if they think well, I've got this bit of information, but I can't stand by someone if I don't know what's going to come on Wednesday or Thursday or Friday. I think that climate that the Telegraph set probably precipitated the swift action from the FA. I think if they'd published everything, given it to, here's all our documents, there you go, have a look at them, I think the FA might have taken a bit more time, and possibly they might have come to a different conclusion. They may have stood by Sam and said, actually, we've looked through it, we don't see any wrongdoing. I think the reason they acted so quickly was because there was that situation of 4 or 5 more days of coverage potentially to come, and the potential embarrassment of standing by someone publicly only to find 24 or 48 hours later that something completely new, second wave, then alters the story.
So do you think with hindsight, knowing what then emerged out of that whole gamut of Telegraph coverage, do you think the FA looked back at it, with hindsight, they would have taken the action they did?
I think they probably still would, purely because I think at the heart of it, sometimes these situations, it's not necessarily about what has been done, it's almost about the perception. And the perception was, here was a manager that was within weeks of taking the job trying to generate additional income that he really didn't need, when the income that was already being given to him by the FA would have sufficed. So the perception was someone was trying to generate more income and also potentially advising on how to circumvent FA rules. So in that circumstance, regardless of whether he's actually broken the rules or whether he said in comments, I would need to run this by my employers, I would need to, before I do that, I would have to get the FA consent. He did say all those things, but I think that within the story, the way it's reported, the way it's perceived by the public, I think those were quite minor details, and the reality was they probably perceived someone that would look to play on the edges of what is acceptable, and I think they probably felt that